Welcome to Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host, and thank you for downloading today's episode. Happy almost Thanksgiving to those of you in the U.S. Today is kind of a bonus episode. I wanted to make sure that as you move into this week of cooking and baking, that we use the best quality oils that we can. And it's really important for me to make sure that your health is of priority, regardless of which of the shows that you listen to of mine. While this episode aired a few years ago, I'm bringing it back because I know a lot of you are new to the podcast community. And so I want to make sure that you were aware of the different kinds of oils and their temperatures, because I know a lot of people are overcooking some of these oils and they're becoming rancid, which then oxidizes your cells, which basically kills your cells. It's like rusting. And again, really important, especially when we're cooking so much. And if you're not in the US, I'm sure you're still cooking and using oils and fat at some point, or you're going out to eat. So I just want to educate you about what is going to be good for your body. But before we get started for today's show, I do want to let you know that today's show is brought to you by PK Odal and the Feng Shui Advantage. PK was a sponsor at the Next Big Step. Will also be a sponsor at January's Releasing What Weighs You Down. And what PK has, if you've listened to one of the first shows that we did, and we have another show coming out, PK has a wealth of information. And, to have a consultation with PK, we'll get the ball rolling and get it personalized, which I absolutely recommend. But what if you could get a whole bunch of feng shui information in a toolbox? She's got her Lifetime Keys Personal Directions Self-Mastery Toolbox. Here is your opportunity to easily learn to locate and manage all of your personal feng shui directions. After working with clients, much like you for 20 plus years, PK has fine-tuned the process of explaining how you can locate all your personal directions anywhere on Earth. Now she's able to offer you this information separately from an on-site or remote feng shui advantage consultation. Your Lifetime Keys Personal Directions Self-Mastery Toolbox is the only personalized feng shui system that teaches you how to manage your unique relationship with the magnetics of Earth, including your talent, your intellect, your prosperity, your consuming directions, your valued friends, your lonely pillow, which will help with relationships, your fragile luck and your romance vase, your robbery door, and your injury door. Discover how to activate these feng shui personal directions and learn to avoid the triggering ones like consuming and backstabbing and robbery and injury and lonely pillow directions. Let PK Odal, Master Feng Shui Consultant and Executive Director of the renowned American Feng Shui Institute, prepare your Lifetime Keys Personal Directions Self-Mastery Toolbox. Go to jjflazanes.com/PK. Again, that's jjflazanes.com/PK to get your toolbox now. And make sure going into 2019, you are all set with the best quality energies and enhancements that you can in each of these directions that help you, and of course to remove any of the blocks and any of the areas that possibly could hurt you. But stay tuned for next week's show. PK is going to be back and we're going to be talking about money and a little bit about love, but moving into 2019. So go to jjflazanes.com/PK to get your toolbox now, and it's a lifetime guarantee that you can use it forever and continually shift and change your space. The last announcement before we get started on the show today is that it is a Black Friday sale. If you're considering coming to Releasing What Weighs You Down, January 2019, the 10th through the 13th, again, could very well be the last time I do it here. I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of this. It's 25% off this Black Friday. This sale will end on Saturday, and you just use 25 off at checkout. So 25 capital OFF at checkout to receive 25% off, and it still is applicable to the 2-pay plan that is in effect right now that will end on December 10th. So if you'd like to really guarantee that 2019 will be very different, for those of you that have been following me for a while, you know very well that 2018 brought huge shifts in many, many ways. And if you don't think that I am also shifting and growing with you, I'm walking my talk. I'm taking you on the same journey that I've been going through, that is proven processes with people. So this isn't just a retreat to come and get all happy and then leave. These are actually tools that will change your life and start to shape and release the things that haven't been working for you. So please, releasingwhatweighyoudown.com, 25 OFF, OFF, to get 25% off. releasingwhatweighyoudown.com. Today's show, what oil am I supposed to use? We have back with us our very favorite registered dietitian, Jeanne Peters. Jeanne Peters is a healthy aging expert with a mission to help women and men feel more vital energy through the healing power of whole foods and lifestyle medicine. In practice for over 33 years, she specializes in optimizing women's hormone health, digestive, thyroid disorders, and how to break through weight loss resistance. She co-founded the Nourishing Wellness Medical Center with partner Dr. Alan Peters, who specializes in bioidentical hormone health and homeopathy for men and women. She was voted California Dietitian of the Year by her colleagues for her nutritional expertise and was recently certified in clinical homeopathy. Welcome back to the show, Jeanne.
Hey, JJ, it's great to be here. Thank you.
So we have to laugh at this whole how we started the show. For those of you that are listening, I get inspiration all the time as to different shows to do because it's information that I may understand or know that I don't think other people have caught up with, or something that I've been guided towards that I learn isn't correct. So I know there's a lot of confusion going on. And when we broke this show down to what's the bottom line is what oil, what fat am I supposed to be using in cooking for different things? If you look it up online, you're going to find conflicting information. So I brought back Jeanne, our favorite dietitian, to finally clear the air in terms of the myths that are out there, because I have made some mistakes. I've swapped things because I learned it from the internet and I was wrong. So, Jeanne, let's start with, go ahead. You want to say something about the oil?
I just want to say, let's unconfuse ourselves, because it's a confusing subject. I'm in almost my 60s, and I can tell you in the 33 years that I've been a dietitian, I've seen the pendulum swing like two different ways. So the older we are, probably the more that people can relate to, the idea of no fat. Then there was, polyunsaturated fats, and now we're leaning more towards more saturated fats. So yeah, I could see where people are confused, but it's a good discussion to have, because we do need to help people make better choices. So I'm looking forward to a good, productive conversation.
Great. Let's first start out with dispelling the myth. And I think I might have done it before in a Tasty Tuesday, or you and I might have done it before on your first show, which we did about the healing your hormones naturally, the lifestyle tips. So fat, everyone, does not make you fat. Eating fat does not make you fat, and fat isn't necessarily unhealthy for you. Correct, Jeanne?
Absolutely. Fats are essential to life, because all of our cell membranes, every single cell in your body, needs some fats to help make that membrane strong enough to hold the good things that are needed in the cell, and to protect that membrane from having things that would invade it, like viruses or pathogens. So you need fat in every cell of your body. So fat is really an essential ingredient to healthy living. Fats, 60% of your brain is fat by weight. So to think that we don't need fat would be crazy, but it's looking at the kind of fats or lipids that would help to make those cells strong and healthy and well.
And doesn't increasing our cell membrane allow us to absorb nutrients better and vitamins?
Absolutely. You need this, think of it as almost like a screen. You need a screen that allows things to get into the cell, all the nutrients that help to support that cell's energy and production. But then you also need a screen in which you can literally get the toxins that are just produced by the workings of the cell out. So you need a screen that is strong enough to be able to allow things to move freely in and out, but also something that's not going to be weak and flimsy, that, if viruses came along or some kind of a pathogen or bacteria, it's not able to invade that cell. So the screen is almost like a screen door, like it opens and closes. So you need really, it's a pretty sophisticated system, and you need the right kinds of fats that aren't going to actually close up those holes. And so there are certain kinds of fats that we know that will do that. And so, they are more like your trans fats. Some of the fats that we've heard about. I don't know. Did your mom ever use Crisco in a pie?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, my gosh, to make pie crust.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
She probably still does.
Yeah. We were all brought up, if those of us that lived in the 50s and 60s, Crisco was one of the very first fats that were made through industrialization. Like it was a liquid fat, which then they used hydrogen to make it even more saturated at room temperature, so it wouldn't go bad. It would Crisco, I think, would still be, whatever Crisco you bought in the '60s might still be good today. But it's unfortunately that kind of fat that literally gets lodged into the cell membranes, and it's like the cell can't breathe. It can't move things in and out. So yeah, Crisco was one of those fats that definitely was an example of a saturated fat, but an industrialized saturated fat. It wasn't by nature saturated.
And are we supposed to still be, I mean, I already know the answer to this question, but most people think that saturated fat is what causes heart disease.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. I mean, saturated fats are, well, let me just explain for people just to understand the difference between a polyunsaturated and a saturated fat. So fats are basically carbon chains. So it's like you're making a necklace. And then like what holds those chains in place are hydrogen atoms. So like maybe it's a pearl with like a piece that connects those two. And the difference between a saturated fat would be that on every single one of those pearls or carbon links, there's a hydrogen. A polyunsaturated fat has several places where there might be 2 or 3 pearls strung together with nothing in between. And they're a little less stable. They don't have the same kind of stability as a saturated fat. So a good example of a saturated fat would be like butter. So butter is something that if you left it out at room temperature for a couple of days and you forgot to refrigerate it, it's really not going to go bad. It can handle a little bit more exposure to air and even a little bit of heat without going bad. Liquid fats, being more polyunsaturated, more of those little chains are there, they're not saturated. They don't do as well when they're exposed to air or heat or light. They become more unstable, so they're more likely to go bad quickly. They're more likely to go rancid. And so there's a big distinction between saturated and unsaturated in that regard, but that plays out when you start looking at these polyunsaturated fats that were designed to be used for cooking, and they're sitting on shelves for maybe weeks at a time, where they may already be highly oxidized and broken down before you even start to use them. So saturated fats are much more stable. They keep the cell membranes actually strong, JJ. They don't allow it to get wimpy or to get, it's almost like a water balloon. Like if you have a tight, taut water balloon, it keeps the water in and it keeps, if it's a taut. So that's how saturated fats are. And liquid fats would be more keeping it lumps, like if it was a thin balloon and it didn't have the tautness to it. We want to watch how much saturated fats we use just simply because it has an impact on these cell membranes.
Because most people believe and have been told that saturated fat is what causes high cholesterol and therefore heart disease, people are afraid of some of the good quality, high saturated fats like you're talking about that actually do better for our bodies. So can you just address very quickly sort of that balance between what really is causing the heart disease that we need to be concerned about and that it's not butter?
Yeah, I mean, really, it's going all the way back to like the 40s and 50s. There were a number of researchers when they were looking at the incidence of coronary artery disease, and they were looking at a relationship between the saturated fat in the diet and like other types of fats. And there were Ansel Keys is one of the first researchers who probably got more publicity than most, who made some assumptions and felt that liquid fats would help to keep the fats that were circulating in your body in a way that would not increase plaque, and saturated fats had more likelihood of increasing plaque progression. It was a really big idea, and it took a while, but the American Heart Association eventually embraced it. And once you get an idea that's so firmly entrenched into people's thinking, it's hard to change it. And, probably one of the biggest advocates that jumped on to the research by Ansel Keys was Nathan Pritikin. And I actually worked for Nathan Pritikin in the early 80s. And at that time, Nathan was so convinced about some of this research from Ansel Keys that saturated fats could lead to an increase in predicting heart attacks and in predicting plaque progression in the blood vessels, that he actually came up with the idea of no fats. I mean, he had basically a 10% fat diet, which that 10% of fat came strictly only from a little bit of fat that you might find in the leanest meat, fish, and poultry, and really no added fat. His diet, I mean, there was tremendous success that he had with that diet. However, nobody really looked at some of the other downsides that existed with that diet, because in order to go 10% fat, you have to go and do almost 80% carbohydrates. And so although people got great results, they also had other issues. One of them was moods. You don't give people any fat and they will definitely be moody. That was 30 years ago. And in the last 20 years, we've seen that when an idea gets developed by medicine, oftentimes what comes to the table are all the commodity groups that would benefit. And so the groups that benefited the most from the American Heart Association's original look at this connection between fat and heart disease was all the groups that represent the various types of oils. So the corn oil industry and all of the polyunsaturated fats like corn and cottonseed and soybean oil and cottonseed oil, peanut oil, all of those came to the table with the idea of putting more money into research to further promote this idea. So when you get money behind, the research gets skewed. So unfortunately, for the last 20 years, we've been putting too much emphasis on omega-6 fatty acids, which are what you find in most of the oils that we consume. And it's not until just recently that some people that really were looking at this from the very beginning are finally starting to get some attention. Have you ever read the book Nourishing Traditions, JJ? It's a book that challenges the politically correct nutrition. And it was written by Sally Fallon and Mary Enig, who was a PhD in fat research. She did all of her research based on fats. So, in any event, Mary is somebody that was one of the first people to really challenge some of these original thinking that goes all the way back to the 40s and 50s. And she's really the one that really has stayed with the idea that we need saturated fats for healthy living. And she was a big proponent of getting back to having people eat butter and duck fat and, gosh, for that matter, fat that we used to go ahead and collect from bacon. All of these kinds of traditional fats that many of us grew up with are now being seen as having more stability and the ability to go ahead and allow our cell membranes to breathe. And the good news is that as we start to incorporate some of these, our serum cholesterol levels are not actually going up. They're in fact regulating and becoming more normalized when we start using more what I call real fats in the diet.
Okay, Jeannie, first I want to get clear about some of the misconceptions about some oils that are out there that we've heard are good or we assume are good based on the title of the oil and why they're not so good. So the first one I want to talk about is vegetable oil. Now, I've known for a long time that vegetable oil is it's almost like margarine. It's not a good oil to be using, whether it be trans fat, and you'll explain that to us. But I know that family members are still using it and friends are still using it, and I'm guessing it's because they think it's healthy because it says vegetable. So can you explain why vegetable oil, like the vegetable oil that you see at the grocery store that just says vegetable, it's not necessarily, it might be a blend of oils. So go ahead, talk about vegetable oil.
Well, vegetable oils are just like what you said. I mean, they're a combination of probably something like safflower or corn or sunflower, definitely soybean oil. Even cottonseed oil is thrown into vegetable oils. So the key and the reason why we want to limit that is because they're almost anywhere from 70 to 80% omega-6 fat. So they're a polyunsaturated fat, which means immediately they're very unstable. So they have more of those double bonds I was telling you. So they don't handle heat, light, air very well. They start to go rancid pretty quickly. When you heat them, like if you're cooking or frying or baking, they smoke at a much lower temperature. So when you start to see the smoking, you already know that you're already creating trans fats. The fact that smoke is being created is letting you know that you're making those fats even more unstable. So when they get into your system, they are going to create damage. They're going to create free radicals and they're going to start creating cell damage. They are not the kind of fats that can actually help you knit those cell membranes together in a way that's healthy. The other way that we'll use those oils is in margarine, where you're taking the oil and then you're adding into it a hydrogen catalyst, which turns that oil from being liquid to a slightly soft or maybe a slightly harder at room temperature type of fat, which the idea there was to make them a little more saturated and a little bit more stable, but you're introducing a nickel catalyst to make this hydrogen gas, this high pressure, be able to turn it into this hydrogenated process. So you're getting some heavy metals, you're getting a partially hydrogenated oil, and they're even worse for you than highly refined vegetable oils because those chemical changes, as I mentioned, they change the fatty acid chain. They switch the position. It's like a Lego block, and it switches from one side. So when you've heard of trans fats are where literally the chemical bonds get kind of turned around in a way. And when it comes into the body doesn't know what to do with it because it's not used to seeing anything with a trans bond. So these trans fats are really toxins for the body. They don't recognize them, and their body doesn't know what to do with them. So they're not incorporating them into using them in a very beautiful way, which is to create our beautiful cell membranes. They're actually going to probably more than likely go straight to being vaulted, around your belly. So those fats have had a huge correlation between not only cancers but just getting fat. So those are the ones that really create a problem for the body. So we definitely don't want to use any margarines that are made with vegetable oils.
All right, so let's go over the no way list. So no margarines,
Yes.
no soybean oil,
Yep.
no cottonseed oil, and we did a show with Chef Farouj, and he was talking about that those are some of the highest genetically modified crops as well.
Absolutely. That's another issue.
Now I get no corn because that's also very genetically modified. No corn, no soy, no margarine, no cottonseed oil. But let's talk about safflower. Really? No safflower oil?
Yep. See, safflower oil is over 50% omega-6. It's got a little tiny bit of minimal amount of omega-3. So in fact, you know what, JJ? I think it's even higher than that. Safflower oil is closer to almost 80% omega-6. So that means it's highly unstable. So if you bought cold pressed safflower oil in a dark bottle, you probably could use it, if you kept it in the refrigerator and you didn't use it for cooking. But aside from that, no. I mean, like some safflower oil, there's a company that actually makes a safflower oil mayonnaise, which, maybe would be a little bit better. But that mayonnaise is sold by Hain, and they sell it in a grocery store, exposed to light. So you're immediately creating a little bit of damage. So those oils, they can be used, but they should be strictly limited because once they start getting heated, they're going to become unstable.
So I don't think I want to promote using corn or soybean or cottonseed anyway, but safflower oil, if used, like you're talking about, probably in a salad dressing, cold pressed in a dark bottle, kept in the refrigerator.
Let me give you two other oils that I think are a lot better and tastier. One is sesame oil. It's got a lot more saturated fat in it. It has about 40% of the omega-6, and then the rest of it is more saturated. And it's very similar to peanut oil. That's what I use for stir frying because it can handle a little bit higher heat. Peanut oil is another one. It's a little bit higher in saturated fat, and it's relatively stable when you're using it like for the occasional stir fry. And if you go into some of the more traditional Chinese restaurants, that's a combo of sesame and peanut is often what's used for cooking, when they do the fast stir fries.
And interesting because I have sesame oil, but I don't have peanut, and I would have thought peanut would not be good. Peanut oil isn't genetically modified?
That's a good question. I probably would have to go and investigate that. I mean, it's relatively stable, so it certainly meets that need. But in terms of genetic modification, things are happening so fast, JJ, that I'd probably have to go online and just see, if you could find an organic variety of peanut oil. I'm sure you can. When you have organic, then you are fairly comfortable that those products are not being genetically modified just because that's the way the National Organic Standards Boards work.
I know there's one big one left that we need to address that we're recommending that people do not use, although most people think that they're supposed to be using it, me included, when I started hearing about olive oil turning rancid at high heats. So we're going to come back, once we come back from break, because we do need to thank our sponsors, we're going to hit that last one that we are recommending that you stay away from, and then all of the wonderful oils to use for cooking in high heat and to make your salad dressing. All right, let's hit the big one that most people think, even when it's non-GMO and organic, that we are supposed to stay away from. Shocker to me in the last 6 months is canola oil. Now, really, even GMO-free and organic, still no, Jeannie?
Yeah, canola oil, unfortunately, canola oil was really never designed for human consumption. I mean, it's funny. I mean, canola actually comes from Canada. It's made from the rape seed, RAPE. It's a very, very tiny seed. You can hardly see it, honestly. Canola was given the name by Canadians, so the CAN for Canada, O for oil, and then LA for low acid. So it was like a low acid oil. But in order to be able to extract the fat from canola oil, you need to use hexane and other types of solvents because it's so tiny. Just to press it, you're not going to get an adequate amount of fat. So they use chemical solvents, to be able to extract that. And really canola oil, if anything, it was traditionally used for oiling machines. Like it had a purpose, but it was not for human bodies. So we already know that some of the fat that is found in canola is tiny bit of saturated. So that's about 5% saturated. It's about 23% omega-6. It's got a little bit more of the omega-3, so it's about maybe 15%. So that's what gave it a lot of recognition by the various health associations. The rest of it is oleic acid, and it goes rancid very easily. What they've discovered is that when you look at baked goods that are sitting on the shelf for long periods of time, anything made with canola oil tends to mold real quickly. The processing of it made into margarines has been shown to actually increase fibrotic lesions in the heart. So these fatty acids found in canola oil, the body just doesn't like it. It's definitely reacting. So when you get lesions, think of those as little pockets of inflammation, and the body is saying, you don't belong here. So yeah, I really think if we can have people leave with something today, it would be to start focusing on the fats that really have health producing qualities rather than things that could really be toxic to your system. Because when you bring in canola oil, you're not going to be able to build cell membranes. That's what we want to be able to do, because your body's constantly reconstituting itself all the time. You're always breaking down cells, and you need the substrates that are going to help make strong cell membranes. And canola oil is not going to do that for you.
Okay, so we're going to get to that. And I know that people want to know what oils they're supposed to be using. It's the title of the show. But now that we've basically pointed out all the different oils that a lot of people probably have and are using, is there anything we can do with them rather than dump it down the drain or just toss it in the garbage? Can I use my canola oil to do anything else? Like, should I be using it for my car? Or you said machine parts. You said it wasn't designed for human consumption. So what can I do with it?
Go ahead and grease your the wheels of your bicycle. Maybe you can just spray it on. I mean, there's oil obviously has some benefit because it's able to take grime away. So maybe you can use it in that regard. Your husband would probably be very helpful in that regard. Maybe he can use it to help make some of the machine parts in your house work a little bit more effectively. But no, don't put it into your body. It really, too many dangers with it. And I think that there's so many other fats that taste better, that don't go rancid quickly, and that can really help you build a vital, healthy body. That's what we want to focus on.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we're getting to that. Okay, everybody, here we go. Now, let's first start out with, because we made the list, and so far the only two on the yes list are sesame oil and peanut oil. So let's talk about high heats, because I did a Tasty Tuesday that was, roasted chicken, and I've been hearing the whole that olive oil goes rancid, so I didn't use olive oil at the high heat, and I used canola oil. So if you've watched that show, I'm sorry. I, just like you, read it in 5 different places. It said to use canola oil in high heat. So no more canola oil. What can I use besides ghee, right? I know ghee is one.
Ghee is one. And beautiful thing about ghee is that it's basically butter with the dairy solids removed. The dairy solids are going to go ahead and burn, so they're going to create a lower smoke point. When you pull that out and you start to go to just something that's just the straight, beautiful fatty acids, you can go to a little higher heat. So you can, saute a beautiful chicken breast in ghee, probably at a medium high heat without seeing it smoke. Another good one that your mom probably grew up with is if you can find a good quality bacon, meaning that you found pigs that are being raised in a little bit more of a healthier environment, more sustainably raised, the fat from those pigs is much more fat stable, and it can also handle high heat. In the old days, we would use the bacon fat for making French fries or for frying things because it could go to more the higher heat. Another one is duck fat. Duck fat is very stable, and now many grocery stores are actually selling small amounts of duck fat fat for those occasional stir fries or for things that you want to get that crispy, crunchy texture. That's why when you think of like a duck breast, it gets beautiful, beautiful, crispy skin because the duck fat itself is so stable. It can handle high heat, JJ, without having it break down and start to smoke. So that would be a couple: ghee, duck fat, lard that's made from bacon fat that's been rendered. So you've taken out all the impurities and you just have the pure white fat. And you can buy that, by the way, now at the grocery stores.
Now, and sesame oil is good for high heat?
Sesame oil definitely can be used for frying. Absolutely. So it's peanut oil or sesame oil. Both are recommended for doing like stir fries where you're using it at a medium to medium high heat.
So those would be the best. For any others that we can do at 450
Those
degrees in the
are
oven?
those would be the ones that I would say would be best. Olive oil, you can certainly use palm oil, some coconut oil, but you're not going to want to go to 450 with those because they're not quite that stable. But they certainly are something that could be used at like 350, so in baking.
Okay, so olive oil, coconut oil, palm oil can be used up to about 350.
Like if you're baking it, you're not getting it exposed. When you put olive oil, for example, in a pan and you start to raise the temperature of the heat, that's going to be different than, let's say, if you put it into let's say you made it into like a baked good. Like Italians make a lot of cakes in which they'll use olive oil. They're maybe baking it at 350, but it's not having a direct exposure to that heat. So it handles quite fine. But like an olive oil, when you're going to be putting it on the stove because you want to saute a chicken breast or some vegetables, you probably want to keep that more at a medium low heat. Or, don't get the extra virgin olive oil because that one was designed after one pressing to get the maximum flavor. Olives have a lot of phenols and they have a lot of antioxidants that contribute to the flavor, which gives it its color. Its deep green color comes from some of the chlorophyll that's found naturally in the actual olive. When you remove that, if you were just to do repeated pressings, you'd still get fat, but you wouldn't have as much of those phenols. So actually olive oil that's sold maybe is just virgin olive oil, not extra virgin. So it's a little lower grade, would be better for cooking than, let's say, to use an extra virgin because you're going to lose some of those flavor components when you're heating it up. So I buy
Got
a
it.
Trader Joe's, brand that's in a can so it's not exposed to light. It's not exposed as much to heat. You have to puncture it in order to use it. So there's very little air that's getting inside and it works fantastic. And I love it. That's the olive oil that I'll use for cooking.
Okay, and then other oils, what about the nut oils, the walnut oil and the almond oils and the avocado oils?
They're
Talk about
lovely.
those.
They're fantastic fats, but you want to use those for your salad dressings because they're very delicate oils. They do not handle being cooked with at all. So like walnut oil, or I'll use avocado oil. You could probably use avocado oil if you use it at like a low heat, but it's an expensive oil. So you're not going to use it as an everyday oil. And like same thing with walnut oil, it's so expensive. But to use it on a salad, amazing. Wonderful flavors, lots of antioxidants in there. And why you want to be gentle with those is because as soon as you heat up antioxidants in a pan, you're losing some of those qualities. Walnut oil is great just to drizzle on top of a salad or like something like a hazelnut oil. I've seen pecan oil. Some of those are really beautiful and very delicate. So use them. And then the other ones that you could use, the tropical oils, I mean, those are wonderful. They're also very stable because a lot of those tropical oils have a higher amount of saturated fat content. So I'm thinking of like a palm oil, or a palm kernel oil, which typically from the countries that it comes from is like a bright red oil because there's a lot of natural antioxidants in there that give it its color. So that's a beautiful fat. And those are just naturally not only are they beautiful fats to cook with, but they're also beautiful fats because they tend to be antimicrobial, antibacterial, antifungal. So they have a lot of strong qualities that make them, in addition, beautiful fats to use if you're dealing with like a fungal infection like Candida.
And then butter. What about butter?
Oh yeah, butter is fantastic. I mean, that's one of the best fats that you can use well, it's so beautiful because not only is it a very stable fat to use, like if you're cooking, it does have a smoke point, so you're going to use it on a low to a medium low heat, but it's also got all these fat soluble vitamins. And the body really handles butter. The butyric acid that's found in butter has an interesting quality, JJ. It has the ability to really calm down the gut and to actually build up the gut wall and to actually feed some of the probiotics that live in the gut, the healthier flora that lives in the gut. It is actually food to help them be more effective at doing their jobs. So there's a beautiful symbiotic balance when we use either ghee or butter, starting in the gut and then using it to help build these cell membranes in such a way that allows the cell to breathe.
I always love to support more information about the health benefits of using butter and ghee because, in my opinion, it's one of the best tasting fats. And like I've said multiple times on Tasty Tuesday, butter is not dairy in my world because there's no protein in the butter. So we can digest it better, correct, than most dairy.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's, for some people who are sensitive, it's beautiful.
Okay, so now we have probably given you a to-do list of looking in your kitchen. You're probably a little frustrated with all the oils you're going to want to throw out now, but at least now you can feel really confident and good about the health benefits of all the other oils that we're recommending. And Jeannie, if someone wants some help with their diet and maybe they have some sensitivities or they don't know about some of these things, how can they get in touch with you so they could work with you on adjusting their diet?
Beautiful. Yeah, I would love to help anybody who's got questions around fats, whatever that we discussed today. You can email me at JP for Jeannie Peters, JP at nourishingwellness.com. Nourishing Wellness Medical Center is the place where my husband, who's a medical doctor, and I do our business. We're in the Redondo Beach area, but I Skype just like I'm doing with JJ right now. And so you can just call our medical center or go online to www.nourishingwellness.com. Feel free to send me an email and look at us up on Facebook. We're always posting tips. Today, I just posted some tips on some of the different nuts and seeds that are fantastic for somebody who's trying to make a transition towards using healthier fats. So looking at things like pumpkin seeds and pine nuts and pistachios and walnuts and some of those other wonderful nuts and seeds that are found in nature that help to really keep our cell membranes healthy and well.
Excellent. And as always, we could continue talking, and we will. We will have Jeannie back always. So please, if you were interested in the show and you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, go to fit2love.tv and write a comment or email me, info@invisiblefitness.com. Thank you, Jeannie, again for being my favorite and most interviewed guest so far on the show.
Thanks, JJ.
And one last reminder, Jeannie Peters will be at Releasing What Weighs You Down 2019, teaching us about healthy detoxing and fat loss, along with brain health. So take advantage of this Black Friday sale and get 25% off at releasingwhatweighsyoudown.com.